That has potential of getting in the way of my foot. Clock the transfer case more, he says. It'll be fun, he says. So here we are under the Jeep. I'm going to have to do a little clearancing. You can see here where my transfer case already was hitting this cross member. It's deformed it a little bit. And then you can see where my drive shaft may have just slightly kissed the floor there or rubbed on it a lot and bore a hole through it. So we're definitely going to have some issues. We definitely need to cut this whole chunk right here out and cut some of this bracket out. And then I've got a fuel line running above my brake line here, so I'm going to take that fuel line off so my brake line can go up inside this cross member a little bit, and then the fuel lines will run over it. So I'm hoping those clear the transfer case going where they're at. It's been very tight in the past. That's why I had these little pieces of rubber sleeve on there, but we'll see how that all works out here soon. One more thing I'm going to do before I button up this transmission install is I'm going to install this ThermoGuard FR for fire resistant. So this is actually a real nice heat barrier. It's foiled on the one side, felt on the other. And I got a piece that is perfect size to cover the transmission, so it's going to insulate the floor above the transmission. And it's also big enough that it's going to go all the way across underneath the exhaust to insulate there. My passenger floors have always been super hot, so hopefully this makes a difference. I'll show you here in a second how we're going to install this in the floor. So from underneath the Jeep, you can see how we installed this barrier. I had TJ up top. We ran rivets through it, and I put big fender washers underneath so that I got long 3/16 rivets, 3/16 fender washers. So we got a nice big surface down here holding that stuff. It's really wrinkly, but you know what? It doesn't matter. It's gonna definitely reflect this heat down to the transmission. Of course, we cut around the shifter. Real happy with it. It's not super tight. I got my fuel lines protected above it as well. So I think that's gonna do a nice job of keeping this transmission heat out of the interior. That's more better. So you can see the hole we've cut there. So we're going to build a new tunnel over top of this that's going to come ahead, and hopefully it doesn't interfere where my foot has to sit for the gas pedal. It's pretty close. We'll have to get the drive shaft in and see how everything really fits. I previously talked about trimming my floor, which I've done. Oh, not a good angle, but there's clearance here. We have right now about 1/4 of an inch between my transfer case and the floor. Again, I clearanced up here where I cut my floor out for my drive shaft. We'll deal with all that, filling that in later. But everything clears. My fuel lines that go above here are loose, so they're not pinched. Everything seems to be working well. And again, this is jacked up right now, and it's touching the floor somewhere, but I put the mount back in, I put the cross member back in, and right now my transmission mount is about 1/8 of an inch from the transmission, which means the transfer case and transmission are going to come down another 1/8. So I think it's just about perfect. Let's see up here on the clocking, if we can see it. I've actually created a fair amount of space under there. My skid plate actually could be cut out and made level now. So I could gain another inch of ground clearance here, because yeah, you can see underneath here, there's a fair amount of space in there. We may have to cut that out and build a new one. So maybe this is scope creep. Maybe this is just me making a good decision. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to modify my transfer case skid plate here. It currently has about 1.5 inches of crown to it to clear my transfer case in its old configuration. But now that I've reclocked the transfer case to be flatter, I don't need that 1.5 inch drop. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to cut all this back off. We're going to put a flat plate on it to get that 1.5 inch of ground clearance back. So instead of welding a new piece of steel to the bottom of that skid plate, I remembered I have a piece of 1/4 inch aluminum. So we're going to go ahead and cut this with a plasma cutter and see how that works. I've never plasma cut aluminum, so you can learn with me. Let's see what happens. too bad. I think maybe I need a little more power, but it cut through. Use my Astro 1442 nutsert tool to put some more nutserts in the floor. It's just that simple. Fill this hole. Instead of building a panel that I'm going to weld in, I'm going to go ahead and add some nutserts and bolt in this panel because it's so nice to change my front drive shaft. So I have to add a piece to close off the end there, but so far it's following the shape of the floor nicely. So we're going to go ahead and add a few nutserts and get that piece bolted in before we build the next piece. I'm just going to screw the nutsert on there with these all the way open. Screw it down until it's just about snug. Push it into the hole. Just pull your arms together, and that's all there is to it. I mean, these nutserts are so easy. They're so nice to use. Definitely a worthwhile purchase. That's it, 4 nutserts. Go ahead and set this plate back in. Ultimately, I'd like to have some button head screws for these, but for now, we're just going to go ahead and throw in some normal hex screws. So in order to build that last little end piece, I'm using my old sledgehammer that I've kind of polished and ground so it's a little bit smoother so I don't transfer a lot of crusty shapes into my steel. I'm using some sheet metal in my hammer, and I'm just slowly working this shape over the anvil to try to create the shape I need to match up with what I have on my floor. So we're going to keep working this a little bit more, and then we'll take you back over and see how it fits. Using this edge, and I'm just trying to kind of hammer over it just to start creating that bend that I need. Once we get it roughed into shape, we'll use the hammer and dolly, smooth it out a little bit more, but I think we're pretty close. We're going to go ahead over to the Jeep and see how this fits. Let's see where we're at. It's starting to take some shape. Definitely need to create more crown here that I haven't yet, but I'm starting to get that where it needs to be. Oh. Probably gonna have to clearance this in the middle to get that compound curve that I need. But I don't know yet. We're going to work it some more and see where we end up. So we went ahead and flipped over the anvil, getting the larger, flatter side. We're going to see if we can stretch this middle a little bit. We're getting it to move. Okay, back to the Jeep. We're actually getting pretty close to the shape this needs to be. We're going to go ahead and cut some of this extra material off, and then I'll show you how we're stretching it. The way it sits on the floor, you've got this crown here, but also the floor dips under. So we're trying to stretch this section to kind of get the shape of it to follow. I've already stretched it some. I'm going to show you how we stretch it some more. Using the round end of my ball peen now, which is actually forcing that material away and causing it to stretch and building that other shape I need. You can pick it up on the camera here, but I've actually made this edge really super thin now, but it's starting to take shape. We're going to take you back over to the Jeep and show you where we're at. You can see here what I'm talking about. I've got this shape and almost the opposite shape I have to fill down there, so I'm trying to get it to crown up here and crown down over there. You can see we're making progress. We're getting it to fit that shape. So I spared you guys a whole bunch of hammering. So I took the ball peen and I really stretched this area here. I got a really nice fit now, and there's no gap here, hardly at all. So now I just need to trim this flush, clean up my edges so it fits right, and then I can weld it to the other piece. It's amazing what you can do with just a hammer. I actually hammer formed that entire compound radius end cap. Fits really nice. We got to weld it together. So we decided to up our welder game here in the Daddy Jeep garage, and we picked up this Eastwood MP250i Elite. I'm sorry, Eastwood Elite MP250i. So I'm gonna do my first weld with it on this piece I'm building. We're gonna set it up awful glary at 160 on the volt, or 16 on the voltage, 172 for the wire speed, which is as close as I could get on the chart because it wants us to use smaller wire than we have. So I'm just gonna wing it and see where we end up. We're going to call this piece done. I ground it all a little bit. I did planish this. I didn't show you on video, but planishing is basically driving the weld back up, because when you weld, it'll swell up, and as it cools, it'll actually dip back down. So you want to drive that weld back up. So I put it back on the anvil with the ball peen end of the hammer, brought that weld back up some so I could weld it or grind it a little closer to smooth. So it's not perfect, but we're not building a show car, we're building a rock crawler again, so I'm real happy with it. Let's go throw it in the Jeep. So there it is back in place. I am super happy with how that turned out. I think it follows the shape of the floor extremely well. Gives me plenty of drive shaft clearance. It's perfect. And the finished product with some duplicolor bed liner sprayed on it. I also went ahead and I patched this hole in the floor that was in needing of being patched for a long time. So again, I am really super happy with how this turned out. You know, the shaping, the compound curves that I built here really make me happy. You know, it's not rocket science. I was just pounded on metal with a hammer until I got the shape I wanted. I mean, it took a little finesse, but just some patience and keep on hammering until it ends up right. So guys, thanks for watching. I hope you learned some things. I know I learned some more stuff. Every time I work with sheet metal, I learn a little bit more. Really enjoy working with sheet metal. The more I do it, the better I get. And that's just it with a lot of things. Just keep practicing and you get better. So thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe. We'll see you next time.